Welcome to all of you to ISEC Golden Jubilee lecture on low carbon energy systems, seizing market-based business opportunities across borders by Professor Kaliappa Kalirajan. This is the first lecture in the Golden Jubilee lecture series of this institute. I would like to inform all of you who are present here that ISEC has completed 50 glorious years as All India Research Institute devoted to research, training, and capacity building in social sciences. The institute was set up by Professor V.K.R.V. Rao in 1972, and then now it has just completed 50 years, and then the whole of year, and then we will be having several celebrations, and then they will all the celebrations will culminate by January 20th next year. And of all these activities, and then we have we give considerable importance to the Golden Jubilee lecture series. And then as a part of this lecture series, we will be inviting the friends of ISEC, and then chairman past, present, and directors past, present to this lecture series, and also the ISEC alumni. And then we are looking forward to this lecture series. I am very happy that today we have Professor Sukhdev Thorat, Chairman, Board of Governors. He is with us. And then and I would like to inform those of you who are not familiar that Professor Thorat has been recently elected for the second term as the chairperson of Board of Governors. And on behalf of the institute and on my own behalf, I congratulate him for becoming chairperson of the Board of Governors for the second term. And he was unanimously elected by all the board members. And then it so happened that this being the Golden Jubilee year, then we have had unanimous election of BOG members, and then also faculty representatives, and the chairperson also. And then we have we are looking forward to receive his guidance, support, and encouragement in taking ISEC to greater heights. Professor Thorat needs no introduction. He has been a distinguished researcher, and he has done considerable, very path-breaking work in the discrimination, the labor market discrimination, in the employment discrimination, and various kinds of this. I think you rarely come across a study on discrimination without a citation to his work. And then so he has worked for a long time in JNU, and then he is a very distinguished teacher, and then wherever he goes, and the students come and meet him. And he was also the chairperson of UGC and ICSSR, and currently he is the chairperson of several institutes, including ISEC. On behalf of the institute and on my behalf, a warm welcome to you, sir, to this thing. And then we request him to chair this lecture. That's one thing. Secondly, I also welcome Professor Kaliappa Kalirajan, Emeritus Professor, Crawford School of Public Policy, the Australian National University, Canberra. And he will be introduced, he will be given more detailed introduction by my colleague, Professor Kalirajan. And I just want to say this much, that Professor Kalirajan has been a long-standing friend of ISEC, and then we have heard him on 2-3 lectures by him in the past. And recently, he has also brought out a special issue of our Journal of Social and Economic Development. And then he has taken pains to bring out this special issue. And we are grateful to him. And we are very happy that Professor Kalirajan, who is a very distinguished academician, and then very well known, and then internationally well-known academic on various fields. He is delivering the Golden Jubilee lecture. So we are honored, sir, and a warm welcome to you, and welcome back to ISEC. And then a welcome to you, sir, once again. So I also welcome the members of BOG, and then we have quite few newly elected members of the Board of Governors. I will not take anyone's name, and then I warmly welcome, and I also welcome Professor Gopal Kadikodi, and then he was former director. Very happy to see you, sir, with us, and then happy that you are able to join us as a this thing. I also welcome life members who have joined in this to this lecture, and my own colleagues, faculty, staff, and students. And now I request Professor Kala Sridhar, to provide an introduction, an academic introduction to Professor Kalirajan. Over to you, Professor Kala.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Rajshekhar. Thank you very much, Professor Thorat Saab, for this opportunity. And I once again welcome Professor Kaliappa Kalirajan to this inaugural Golden Jubilee lecture. Welcome to you, sir. Welcome to ISEC. Thank you very much for agreeing to deliver this very first inaugural Golden Jubilee lecture for us. And we are looking forward to a feast, sir, and to say the least. And I'm really very privileged to have this honor and pleasure of introducing you today. And I thank Professor Thorat and also Professor Rajshekhar for this opportunity. And Professor Kalirajan, famously as Professor Kali, as he is known, is no stranger to the academic world. He is currently Professor Emeritus at the Crawford School of Public Policy at the Australian National University in Canberra. A very good evening to you, sir, because it's quite late in Canberra, we know that. And to introduce a little bit about his academic background, Professor Kali received his master's in mathematical economics from Madurai University, and he has a Master of Letters in Econometrics from Madurai University and a Doctor of Philosophy in Economics from the Australian National University. And in order to introduce his work a bit, so this is like filling big shoes, right? And he has done extensive work in macroeconomic policy, trade policies, reform, and how they have impacted poverty reduction, and also what the sources of growth are. And as we understand it, his most significant work has also been in a stochastic, like a production frontier methodology, which has given him international recognition. And he has several research publications in these areas in very highly reputed academic and policy journals. And I would like to mention to this audience that he received a special commendation award from the Indian Econometric Society for his outstanding work on stochastic frontier production function analysis in December 1994. And no need to say that he has co-authored or edited more than a dozen books published by reputed international publishers. And he's taught and supervised many PhD students across India, Australia, and Japan. And I should highlight that he's currently serving on the editorial board of very highly rated Elsevier journals, like the Journal of Asian Economics and the Developing Economies, which is published out of Japan by Blackwell, and the International Journal of Applied Economics, and our own Indian Economic Journal, which is published by the Indian Economic Society. Now, coming to the topic of today's inaugural Golden Jubilee lecture, which Professor Kalirajan is all set to deliver, it's very, very thoughtful and timely research topic for all of us, because as all of us know, Asia has been growing economically and also politically very rapidly. And this has, the economic growth of Asia has had a lot of impacts on the environment. And as the environmental Kuznets curve will demonstrate, there are a few more years possibly that Asia has to grow, and in order to minimize its impact on environmental degradation. And to add insult to injury, now the COVID pandemic has struck havoc on humanity and has brought about a crisis for the last couple of years. And we don't know what the environmental impacts of the COVID pandemic are yet, although in countries like India, this has actually had some favorable impacts because of a lot of work from home and all that. And it was stated as early as April and May of 2020, 250 kilometers away from the Himalayas, when someone could see Mount Everest and Himalayas from Jalandhar, Punjab, right? So that was the extent of reduction in pollution because of the pandemic-induced lockdown in India. So Professor Kali is going to talk to us about this and the need to accelerate the transition to a low carbon economy in the context of the pandemic recovery, but in how to do this in a cost-effective and sustainable way. That we believe is the most important part of his lecture today. So I believe that in COP26 conference, which was recently held in Glasgow, Scotland, I think most of the countries committed to a net zero carbon economy by 2050-60, although this is 2070 for India. That was India's commitment at COP26. And Professor Kalirajan will highlight where trade, regional cooperation, bilateral pacts and coordination can have the greatest impact. And he will point to a lot of policy aspects like trade, carbon pricing, carbon taxation, and innovation, where interestingly, such pacts actually reduce the cost of implementing national actions and also supplements, hopefully, all international, regional, and bilateral trade pacts. And we are really looking forward to this feast of a lecture from Professor Kalirajan. Once again, thank you very much, sir. And we are looking forward to hearing from you for the rest 40-45 minutes or so. Thank you very much, sir. And I will not waste any more of your time. Once again, thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Kala. And then now I would like to invite Professor Kalirajan. Sir, would you like to say anything, sir? Professor Thorat, sir?
No, I only say that I welcome him.
Okay, sir.
That he has taken out his time to speak to us in the series of lectures that we are going to organize during celebration of the Golden Jubilee of the ISEC. And he's going to speak, I think, on a very important topic, growth with sustainable development. But he's going to focus, I think, more on the policies and give the directions. So we all look forward to listen to him. I also welcome all the participants. I particularly see the new board member here, Indira and others. I can see Jafed. So welcome to all of you for your first participation in this lecture. We hope that you will be able to participate in the following program of the ISEC on the occasion of the Golden Jubilee. I think I also appreciate the effort by the director that we have a series of lectures now. We will, in fact, I would like to say that we are working on the program to be undertaken during the entire year. I feel that it's going to be a very rich program. Part of it will be review about all activities and how we can develop a perspective for the further development. But part of it will be a lot of academic activities, and series of lectures is one component of that. The unit, each of the unit are going to contribute here. They will organize lectures on their behalf, on the behalf of their own unit. So it will be all inclusive process, and we will send the new board member and some of the directors, former director, the the entire program that we will undertake during the year, and we look forward to their comments. Well, with this preliminary remark, I think Dr. Rajshekhar, we should invite Kaliappa Kalirajan to begin his speech.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I would like to invite Professor Kalirajan to deliver his lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's Professor Thorat and Professor Rajshekhar and Professor Kadakodi, Professor Madheswaran, and Professor Sridhar, and my good friend Professor Bende, and Professor Meenakshi, and Professor Vani, and these are the people whom I have been contacting in either one or different ways. And so Professor Gopal Kadakodi, special thanks to you in spite of all your physical disalignment, still you were able to sit and listen to me. That's great. And say today's topic, let me share the screen. Okay, today's topic, what we are considering, comes from a small part of the study, what we just finished. And this has been published just about a couple of weeks back in January 2022. The title of the book is Rethinking Asia's Low Carbon Growth in the Post-COVID World Towards a Net Zero Economy. And this is edited by Venkatachalam Anbumali and myself and Xian Bin Yao, who used to be the vice president of the ADB. And this was a major project funded by IRIA in Jakarta. That is Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. In this one, I think we have about 6 chapters, and each chapter has been written by 3 or 4 researchers. So totally about 20 people worked in this project. And we 3 were the main coordinators. And myself and a couple of some of my colleagues from New Zealand and also from Australia, we wrote chapter 5. And I'm taking some part from chapter 5. It's not the full part, but some part, which is really useful in explaining what are the opportunities this COVID has given in terms of, progressing towards the net zero economy. So with this introduction, so this is the major source of my talk, that is from this book. This book, I think that, I have the soft copy. I'm sure that I should be able to send this copy to you. So let me check with the publishers and then I think it should come. Okay, why this topic is so important at this time? For 2 reasons. One is the economy is progressing very fast because we lost growth in 2019 and 2020, so we want to pick it up. And so we are moving very fast. And particularly the Asian economies are having faster growth than the rest of the world. But at the same time, it also has a cost. When you are moving faster, you want to make use of the available energy and the resources, which I don't think that we can replenish or we can reproduce it that quickly. But each day, our Asian countries' progress leads to greater amount of carbon emissions. But at the same time, who are the people very much affected? The poor. Because the whole idea of the development economics is lift the poor above and have inclusive growth. So in that respect, we are now giving damage to these people, those who are very vulnerable, particularly the people living in the islands. And that is because of these climate change issues. So the main solution for this is the transition to the low green growth, which means we are now going towards net zero growth. But there are various definitions about net zero growth, but simply we call it as net zero, which means we do not want to add anything more to these emissions. And this model, which has been promoted and which has got a lot of support in this COP26, even though in COP21, we have these national, determined contributions. But later, we found that in 2019 report says that the UNCCC's report says that even with that kind of changes in these government policies and the use of the low carbon technologies, still we are lacking behind the commitments or the contributions what we agreed in the COP21 meeting. So the 26 gave more enthusiasm, and then it gave more pressure to work towards the NZT, that is the net zero target. And this model also provides a lot of opportunities. Okay, so this is one. And the second, because of the COVID, definitely we need to find different ways of restructuring the economy to put it on this growth path. And in that process, now we have an opportunity or chance to develop these low carbon technologies, but at the same time to promote the economic growth. And many people should be wondering whether it is possible to grow with less emissions. So now we have seen that comparing the data from 1990 and the 2019, it is possible to decouple growth with the CO2 emissions. So this, the graph indicates that it is possible. Some countries are doing it much faster and some are doing it a little bit slow, but that could be due to various national policies. Now, let us look at how is this decoupling done? That is it possible to decouple economic growth from carbon emissions, which means using less energy to produce the same economic growth or higher economic growth. Now, let us look at how it can be done. Let us go to the fundamental basic question that what we will be asking in international and development economics is simple. While a small number of countries have progressed well in form of moving the standard of living of the people by decoupling economic growth and CO2, okay, why majority of the countries are not able to do? And the corollary question to this is, while some countries have done it, why not they sustain that one? So they couldn't sustain and then they left behind. And the examples we are given for this decoupling of economic growth, Japan is a good example, and then the European Union. So these are the two countries which have been able to decouple growth CO2 consistently. That is sustainability even then. Now, the next question is, we need to answer why those countries are able to do it and some are not able to do it. So the answers can be looked at, again, going to the fundamental production and consumption theories. When you combine the consumption output, say output is produced by definitely inputs, and then that is the physical capital and the human capital. And then how these inputs are combined, which is technology. And then how to obtain better technology. That is, the means of obtaining these better technologies. One is we can produce ourselves the technology or trade and investment, foreign direct investment helps us, facilitates to bring in these new technologies. And then finally, while you bring the new technology, you should be able to apply it in the proper manner. At the same time, you have to be sustained, you have to be seen as a sustained country getting better technology time to time. So for that, we need the governance, that means macroeconomic policies. Now, with this relationship, we understand easily, we need the collaboration of many countries. Where does it come? It comes through the technology. So because when we have this bullock technology and we have the tractor technology, so these are all the technologies that lead to the output growth, but the technologies can be developed by us or borrowed. So which means we need the help of other countries. So that is why the regional cooperation comes in. So regional cooperation such as SAARC and ASEAN, and then the RCEP and the CPTPP, all these things are regional cooperation. I'm referring only to the Asian continent. Next, so in order to seize these opportunities for growth, at the same time, decoupling growth with emissions. So this is, whenever I say growth in this lecture, it is decoupling growth with CO2 emissions. Now, before then, we have to look at what are the instruments that we can use. So I'm going to take up, many instruments are there, but I'm going to take up the crucial and the very important market-based instruments to influence consistently and sustainably, that is the delinking growth with the CO2 emissions. One is international trade, and another is research and development. And the third one, what we are going to look at in this lecture, is the research and development, the second one, and the third one is carbon pricing and the carbon market. So these are the three major things which we would like to see, and we will draw examples from some of those countries in the Asian region. Here, Asia, we include Australia too in this region. So trade and technology and research and development are the feasible or the acceptable, acknowledged, internationally acknowledged instruments that provide a flexible and sustainable climate neutrality, or NZT, net zero target by 2050. Now, the interesting policy questions are, as I mentioned, all the technologies cannot be developed by us, so we need to import the technology. Now, the question is whether it is possible to import the technologies without any restrictions. At the same time, the corollary, the other side of this one is whether it is possible to export the low carbon intensive goods without any constraints in the international market. Now, in this context, we will see whether the RCEP regional cooperation, even though India is not currently a member of RCEP, we have included India also in the analysis because, India may join at a later stage. So in that anticipation, because when they started talking about in 2012, India was a member, and it only very recently it has gone for various other reasons. So we will include India in our analysis. So we will see that whether these are sub-countries. So the objective here is whether the regional cooperation is helping to remove these constraints, eliminating the constraints in the exporting countries. So for that, we need to work out a methodology. So in this case, as this is a kind of a policy-oriented lecture, I will not go into the details of the methodology. I'm happy to do it, but you are all in the evening time. It is about 3:34. So if I go into details of the mathematics, many people may close the internet and go on sleeping. So it is better not to bring in mathematics, only the numbers. Okay. So with that assumption, let me say the answers is no and yes. For what it is no, And for what it is, yes, you will see. No, that means there are constraints in promoting exports of low carbon goods. Okay, so which says that, are there not constraints? No, there are constraints. And then whether these constraints can be minimized or eliminated, yes, it is possible through the regional cooperation. Okay, now we used the, okay, so I verbally say what is the methodology, and I verbally explain what we do, okay, without putting into mathematics. What we constructed was what is called the meta-stochastic production frontier. So here, this meta-production frontier involves envelope of frontiers from different regions. This is just like the long-run average cost curve is an envelope of short-run average cost curve. So in the same aspect, with the same concept, we created this meta production frontier as an envelope of these things. But here we made elements which differed from that cost function approach, that we allowed variations from that meta frontier. It may touch in one part, but it may not touch in other parts also. So this meta frontier, in order to construct that, we need to divide the countries, that is the 15 countries, that is the 10 ASEAN countries, and then the other 5 countries which have free trade agreements with this. So we had these 15 countries. So in these countries, some countries didn't have sustained data, so we just removed those countries. But we made 2 groups. Group A is these countries are exporting more on, we calculated the average, and these countries are above average export, and then some countries are below average export. So these countries are Group A: China, Japan, Singapore, India, Malaysia, and Korea. And then Group B is Indonesia, the Philippines, Australia, Thailand, Vietnam, and New Zealand. So we construct the frontier, that is, what is the maximum possible export these countries can get. We calculate that. But then we work out, based on the available data, that is the actual data, what is the actual amount of exports these countries have done. So the potential is technically decided, but the actual is what actually happening on the ground. So the gap, the difference between this is the inefficiency in the trading system. So then we work out how to remove this inefficiency. So we identify the variables which contribute more to this gap, okay? So when we calculate, then we work out the ratio, that is the actual exports divided by the technically decided potential exports. Okay, now the question, how do you decide the technically feasible? That is, a technically feasible is nothing but if there are no constraints within the exporting country and also in the importing country, if there are no constraints. Okay, what could be the constraints within the exporting country? Within the exporting countries, there can be constraints in terms of transportation and in terms of port facilities, and infrastructure, okay, basically. And then the institutional rigidities, that is, you have to fill up so many forms, and then you take this and go. All these things are constraints that are happening within the exporting country. And we are worried very much about that, because unless you correct yourself, you cannot ask someone to correct. So the importing countries also more or less having some problems, but unfortunately, you can't ask them before you correct yourself. So that is why correcting yourself is very important. And so when we take the ratio of the actual export divided by the technically decided potential exports, China is leading, which is about 70%. It is able to realize its potential, whereas Japan is only 68%. And let us go to India, is only 62%. So what does it mean? This means 100 minus 62 is 38. So 38% of the potential has not been realized by India, mainly due to the constraints within India. So that is the major component. So suppose if we are able to remove those constraints, definitely without increasing any inputs, we can shoot up to 100%. So that is the meaning. In the group B, we see Australia is only 54%, okay, and New Zealand only 44%. Now, so that is why, no, we are not able to achieve our potential. Now, yes, it is possible when we remove these non-tariff barriers, okay? Say, I said two barriers. One is within the exporting country, that is in our hand. So that we should correct through our macroeconomic policies. The next one is the constraints that are emanating from the importing countries. In order to solve that, we need regional cooperation. We need these kind of regional associations to talk and other things. You see, so regional cooperation, the variable regional cooperation becomes significant, and I'm not showing that result here. This has been already published in 2017. Next, we go to the technological innovations. So research and development. So research and development is very, very dominant, particularly in this context of low carbon energy systems. Now, if we do not work right now to find more and more new technologies promoting the low carbon energy systems, we may be delaying the dissemination of the technological advancement to other developing countries or other poorer countries, which might lead to increase in cost to meet these kind of technological development in those countries. So again, in order to satisfy the NDCs, what we gave in 2015, it is necessary to go for more technological innovations to promote the low carbon energy systems. Otherwise, people will be always going towards the fossil fuel. Again, there is a catch up here. If the developed countries are foregoing the fossil fuel, coal and all these things, then the international market will be flooded by coal. So which might give incentives for the developing countries to use more and more coal. But if the innovative technologies are available to them, they will also forego these fossil. That is why importance of these technological innovations. Now, now I want to show how important is technological development. So for that also we are using not the meta frontier, the stochastic frontier approach. So this is just the methodology. As I promised, I will not show this. I don't know why it did come. But anyway, this is the picture in order to show that what is the meaning of the stochastic frontier approach. The meaning is very simple. You don't have to look at any of these things. Just look at this. This is the x-axis is input and y-axis is output. And if you take the y-axis, this one as an example of GDP, and the x-axis as an variable, which as Professor Thorat has been working and Professor Madheshwaran, all working on the labor. So let us take it as labor. So what it means is, with the X amount of labor, with a given technology, you should be producing at this point. But unfortunately, due to the constraints, this we call it as behind the border constraints, that is within our country, we are able to produce only this much amount, which is much less than this. So now you will see the importance of working on the frontier, that is working the full potential, because this much amount of the output is wasted because we are not increasing the input. We are using the same input, producing more, using the same technology. So is it not fantastic? So we are using, unfortunately, we are losing instead of using this technology properly, we are losing the output by misappropriation of this technology. That is why it is coming in. Now, let me give you the answers to this innovation, because the purpose here is to show in this analysis, to show that our use of innovations depends on research and development, and then less restriction on imports of technological goods. In order to show that, I do two different equations, but simultaneously estimated together. One gives you what is the renewable energy. So we call it as, we look at the electricity, which is very easy to get the data. So we look at the added electricity generation capacity installation on the left-hand side. And then we take these variables, say capital investment, which is this investment goes in two times. One is the cost of establishing those units of the capacity installation. And the second one is research and development done in the initial stages. So investment, we divide into two parts. One is towards the establishment of the plant installation, and the second is the initial stages of how to choose these things. Okay, so that is R&D kind of investment together that is done. Next, we take the labor, but this is an aggregated data. So we are not taking about labor in each one, but we are taking advanced technical knowledge, those who studied advanced technical, that's engineering basically, and the graduate and other things. So that comes as a labor force. And then we look at the capital and labor and all those things, and other capital and labor. In order to do that, our main objective is capacity installation. This is decided usually by LCOE, that is levelized cost of energy production. So this LCOE data is easily available. So we use that data. So with this, we estimate, and our main acceptance here in this one is looking at the capacity installation and then the investment cost and all those things. And then here in this variable, these are all through the estimation process. So what we have to look at in these variables is this gamma variable, which should be between 0 and 1, but should be significant. Then it shows that this modeling is appropriate for this. Anyway, I don't want to go to the technical thing. The important thing is now there is a gap between the potential capacity installation and the actual. And that gap is decided by, if you look at the right-hand side equations, this is explaining why there is a gap. So this is done by I think this is fixed effects regression. These are all panel data for about 14 countries. That is, in the OTSEP countries, we have deleted 2 countries, that is Myanmar and Brunei. So rest will be the 14 countries out of the 16. The earlier we had 15, that one country, the Myanmar data was deleted. So ASEAN plus 6, the FTA countries were total, but out of this, some of the, as I mentioned, some of the countries don't have consistent data, so it's better to remove them, and it is not at any loss. So here, the important thing is inefficiency can be reduced by imports. That is, if you increase your import of these things, then inefficiency will be reduced. Then this is about the research and development, that is a patent. So if you go for more research and development, that is measured through the patents, how many patents have been registered. Again, it is minus sign, it is significant highly. So because on the left-hand side is inefficiency, that is the gap between this capacity installation and the actual. So it says that if you increase your research and development, then this inefficiency will be reduced. Similarly, the import. So import restriction-less imports of highly technological commodities are very important. At the same time, research and development, is also important for increasing the capacity installation. Now, this is the empirical study which we did, and from there, what we assume is we have available, RCEP members and the potential to help each other. We know that in the RCEP, Japan is there, Korea is there, China, India, these are all technologically advanced countries. So they can help the countries like Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, Philippines, all these countries, they can be through training or various process. But the collaborative things, we are talking only at the government level, but the private sector also has a crucial role and they can be developed. In fact, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation was mooted by the private sector and it has been nourished by the private sector. So that is possible to do that. And so the research and development activities can also be helped through the RCEP and the CPTPP cooperation framework. Now, innovation in Asia. Okay, so we started at 8:30, so now is 45 minutes already. Okay, so anyhow, I will go through it very quickly. I should learn how to close my mouth very soon, right? But unfortunately, it is going on because when you go in details, anyway, let me go to the innovation. What is the status of research and development and innovation at the current situation in Asia? I just looked at the Bloomberg report 2021 about this innovation index, and it says that South Korea is #1 in the list of the world's 60 most innovative countries. And then we got the information that March 2022, the government of Japan is going to launch a university endowment fund with the financing of about $90 billion to enhance research capabilities. Okay, what is happening within India, which you will know much better, but my knowledge comes from the published reports and mostly from the government and also from other researchers. So here, India definitely has a young population, and then in the growth, it is a fast growing economy. And so, digitalization, it is using very fast, and so that it can really promote innovation. So there is a potential. But then with the strength of, the numbers, that is a 20 million new, science, technology, and engineering management graduates every year, we can turn that into high quality innovation building. So India has the potential, and India is already proving that, because entrepreneurship is, I'm just reading in the daily newspapers that there are so many new entrepreneurs are coming in, and even a small kid there from Sivakasi or Virudhunagar from Tamil Nadu, she found a floating house or something, and then the Prime Minister was promoting her knowledge of innovation. So that's really great to hear. Now, let's go to the carbon pricing. So some of the problems is the UNCCC is promoting that carbon markets will grow by 20 trillion. So the Asian countries can benefit its growth. But unfortunately, the carbon pricing is not uniform. Right now, many countries, the carbon pricing is only $2. But whereas in the European Union, they have in 2020 or 2021, they have agreed to lift up to the 88 euro. But the World Bank and the IMF, they come up with that $75 per ton of CO2 will be the right pricing. But I don't know whether it is easy to follow or not. So but still, the carbon pricing is not uniform, so that creates a lot of problem. Let me show you the map of the current situation of carbon pricing, or some kind of carbon tax, or emissions trading system, or emissions reduction fund, which is followed in Australia, which is not compulsory, it is a reduction fund. So with the different combinations, it is there. In the ASEAN, and do I have the figure? Yes, so this is the carbon pricing in Asia. So that one is world, but within Asia. But if I go to ASEAN, only in Singapore, it has been, the ETS has been, carbon tax has been employed or followed. The rest of the countries are, just thinking, and they are working on these things. So here you will see that the major countries are all South Korea's Republic of ETS is this, and then Japan, China, and other countries. Now, why is that some people are against the carbon pricing? It is simple economics. If you, this one is the private marginal cost, and this is the social marginal cost. So if you include this emissions cost, then this will go up. So actually, they should be producing only Q2 at the price of P2, but theoretically, they should be producing this in order to reduce, but in the actual case of without considering the social marginal cost, we are producing at Q1 at the price of P1. So for the consumers, the price P1 is smaller than P2. So the consumers are against this carbon pricing, which some of the companies through their data producing another thing. Now let us go to the price taking consumers. Also, the coincidence of private motives and socially valued outcome is a theoretical concept, but not a real world market. Okay, so the real world, we always want less price, more production. So that is why some of us are not supporting this carbon pricing system. And you know that in Australia, we introduced the carbon tax some time ago, and then they lost the election for that. Then the next prime minister came, and then she promised there will be carbon tax later. Again, the problem. So we removed now no carbon tax. We have only ET, that is Emissions Reduction Fund, ERF. And again, price cannot be always the kind of signal to see. Example is the crop burning in North India, which you all know very well. Because of that, the price cannot represent it. And then in the Australian case, we have this, as I said, the Emission Reduction Fund, and this is only voluntary scheme. So it is not, we cannot say that it is 100% effective. Now, if you look at this, one of the major problems is carbon intensive exports and imports. So if we look at the data, you see that China is the only country which is exporting enormously carbon intensive exports. And it is importing only this much. So this much gap is there, which means they are not, they may spend any much money on the carbon reduction emissions and all, but still their exports is carbon intensive. And only Japan and New Zealand and then the Philippines are the countries which are having less carbon intensive exports. Okay, the rest of the countries are all carbon intensive exports are there. So what is the implication of that? This has made the European Union to go for trying to levy carbon tax. It is when they are importing, if there are so much carbon intensive in that commodity, then they are going to attract additional, so which they are trying to go or negotiate with the WTO, and we are not sure whether it will be successful. So now the question is, if we do that, whether the trade policy is contradicting, is contradicting the emissions reduction policies or technological innovation? No, because technological innovation dissemination, technologies can, if you disseminate the best practice techniques, then these could be easily handled. So the carbon intensive exports will be reduced. So then there is no need for changes in the trade policy and the environment policies. Significant funding mechanism is necessary, and Asia has a huge amount of excess money, particularly from China. And so that should be made use of it, but with the proper care. But carbon pricing should also be done with the low carbon systems, and it's a combination of different, so we should harmonize the carbon pricing system within Asia so that there is no kind of free riding problems for other countries. So let me stop here because I have gone overboard timing. Let me stop here. And if there are any questions or comments or suggestions, I'm happy to deal with that. Thank you so much. And it is really a great pleasure to give this inaugural lecture for the great institute, the one of the pioneer institutions in policy making, and it is serving not only Karnataka, South India, but also entire India, and it is also very well known in the international scenario, and it's all the work of the academics there and also the past academics. And I came to know about this ISEC's work in greater detail much long ago when I was working in Singapore, and Professor M.N. Srinivas was a visiting fellow at the time. And so, we used to discuss about this very long time. And then later, I got involved through my various friends, and then I'm always happy to be associated with the great institution like ISEC. And thank you so much appreciated. And I'll wait for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kalirajan. This excellent lecture, and then I'm sure that we will have some questions and comments. But first, I would like to request Professor Thorat to provide his initial remarks, and then we can open it up for discussion and then comments and questions by others. Over to you, Professor Thorat. We look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Kalirajan. A very insightful, well-studied lecture. It's based on the book and the work that you people have done. Fairly technical and vast. And therefore, I won't dare to summarize it. But I think there are, since it is a model based on certain assumption, you have taken the situation in different countries into account. Yep. The findings are well supported, fairly supported, and there seems to be an hope that if we take certain policies, it is possible that we can have growth with sustainability, a low-cost growth also, and taking care of the environmental aspect. So I won't go into get in detail. I'll pass it on to Dr. Rajshekhar for opening up it for question and answer.
Thank you very much, sir. Now the floor is open, and then if there are any questions, please unmute yourself and then you can ask. Who would like to go first?
Professor Rajshekhar, I'll ask a question.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. So Professor Kalirajan, very nice talk and quite thought-provoking also. And I have one clarificatory question. I was just thinking, I don't know how relevant it is. So when in the first part of your talk, you talk about this efficiency aspect, do we need to take into account the exchange rate somewhere, the real effective exchange rate? Is it necessary? That I was just wondering, because that variable is not seen, perhaps, I don't know. And the second thing is that amongst your countries, is there any country which is completely efficient, which is the 100% efficient in the frontier? If it is so, which one is that? And the third quick question is, I see that Australia, for example, has a lesser efficiency level than say India, but your efficiency is a function of R&D and other variables, which I think is much higher in Australia. And then why do we see a lower efficiency level?
Yeah. Okay. Good questions. And fortunately, I do have answers for all. Because the job of the economist is to answer every question. As Professor Thorat said, with assumptions, we can make it everything possible. So one thing, the first question, you should, yes, I agree. we have, because if you look at the first part,
Mhm.
I did not show you the methodology or the
Yeah.
equations. I
Mhm.
showed you only the result. There it was there because it was already a published one. And yes, we used to tariffs, and because it's an export. So we used to tariffs and also exchange rate.
Okay.
Because what we decided, how do we structure that model? So the structural modeling comes from the conceptualization. So the conceptualization says that export growth. So what are the factors that can influence export growth? So one, we call it as the behind the border factors, that is the rigidities within that, and then beyond the border factors. So this can be divided into two parts. That is visible beyond the border factors and the invisible beyond the border factors. That is, the invisible are just like what are the behind the border factors within the exporting country, and those same factors if they are prevailing in the importing countries, which we don't have full information. So that we call it as invisible beyond the border constraints. But visible beyond the border constraints are exchange rates and tariffs, because that we know. So they are going to tariff and this exchange rate. So these are the three components behind the border, and then again the conventional or factors just like income, population, and then the distance. All these variables are there. Yes, I agree. Second question was
Frontier country.
sorry. Yeah.
Frontier country.
I mean, no. See, God always helps economists more than anyone else, because there will not be any 100% anywhere. If there are 100%, we don't have jobs, right? So it is not possible. Okay, you may ask me as you are an econometrician, so you should ask that whether this 100% is feasible or not. Definitely it is not feasible, because you know that even if you do not worry about the internal behind the border constraints, we do have that the normal or the conventional stochastic variable V. So that leads to the measurement errors and various other things. So definitely there cannot be any estimated value for 100%, and it has not come yet. But if you remove that stochastic nature, then there can be 100%. But we are putting the stochastic frontier. So some can be more, some can be less. So that is the technical issues in that one. Again, Australia, yes, technologically we are advanced, but that doesn't mean that the technology is used efficiently. So we may have the technology, but we may not be able to use it because we don't have proper knowledge or ethics, or that our population is only about 23, 24 million. And so technology is not there. For example, I'm always amazed because I worked in Tokyo for about 9 years. So when I compare that with Australia, you see, I see that there is a large gap in technological development. Take for a latest example. So now we are all doing the COVID testing. So the COVID testing, you see that the rabbit test is there and the other test. So you have something to the nose swab and then the throat swab. But in Japan, they are using the latest technology. That is, you don't have to do all these things, just to spit on a particular tube or something. And then they test.
Saliva test.
Yeah, saliva test. Just they do it. But still, we haven't got it in Australia. So still, we haven't got it in Australia, but it is there in Japan. But you cannot blame that Australia is not getting this technology, because technology again depends on the market. So there should be demand for this. When the market size is bigger, then the technological development incentive is also there. Because here, already established technologies, they don't want to allow these technologies to come in. So that is why, technically inefficiencies, it is coming from best to use. See, each technology comes with the best possible applications, best possible technology, methodologies, methods to apply, but we don't use it. So that is the major reasons for Australia lagging behind technological efficiencies.
Thank you very much. Then I see that Professor Kala.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Rajshekar. And I keep coming back to this food analogy, Professor Kalirajan. That was a feast of a lecture. Thank you very much for that fascinating and thought-provoking lecture. And this has stimulated my appetite for some dessert. And I just have two quick questions. One is, maybe you're aware of this, very well aware of this, because one thing I like about the lecture is the emphasis on low cost options, right? Low cost. Now, as we talk about low cost options, coal is a very, very polluting fossil fuel. And however, that is the one that is freely available and very plentifully used, right? So it's very, very difficult for India or even a developed country like Australia to get rid of coal, right? So how do we really factor this into a low cost equation? Now, that's the first question. Now, the second question is, I always worry about urbanization and what its effects are on emissions, carbon emissions, and also the low cost carbon path that we are all concerned about. So I'd really appreciate your views on this, sir. Thank you very much once again.
Okay, good. Thank you. And these are all always fundamental questions. And definitely, you know that we have answers. Otherwise, we won't be promoting low-cost systems. But again, it's good. I agree with you. Coal is cheaper. Say, this is just like, I mean, in reality, I mean, a simple example, you know, sometimes in some countries, you know that beer is cheaper than water. So do you want me to go for beer or water? So you know, I'm just giving a practical example. So if you want to save money, then instead of going for water, we should go for beer. So the same thing here is the coal. We know that it is emissions and it is going to lead to various things. And so we are having, if you look at the simple example is when we are comparing the prices, look at the solar panels. So now the prices of solar panels have come down enormously. Okay, so it is possible that in future, these the low-cost technological instruments like solar panel, the price will always come down. And if there is no investments in these kind of coal and other things, now we are shutting down. In India, we are shut down, and in Japan, they are shutting down. And in Australia also, we intend to shut down. Because the danger is, as I mentioned, the European Union, if they go for the carbon tax, because they are going to levy, they are thinking of, they have already made a presentation to WTO, and it is being, analyzed there. So the WTO may say, yes, in that case, if you are using the fossil fuel and then exporting, you are at loss. So these are the incentives for us to go away. And then at the same time, technological innovation is trying to reduce the price of, solar panel, which is a good example, and then it is going. Urbanization, yes, that is a good question, because mostly urbanization, that is why we are now going towards, say, this whole low carbon energy systems is not only just electricity production. It is also going towards, the circular economy, transport. We are having the electric car. Now Tata has introduced the new electric car. Now, China is leading in number one electric car producer, and consumers are using it. In Australia, we are getting, I think about $10,000 or kind of concession for electric car, which costs average about $60,000. So we get $10,000 back, and then there is no registration fee. And so like all those things can lead to these kind of urbanization, problems can be solved. And you know that the concept of smart cities, which is being taken up in India. So the basic idea of the smart city is to save on energy, save on electricity, and to develop all those things. So urbanization, yes, even though it is going to increase more, but by using these advanced technologies and methodologies, you can just look at the Japanese housings. So Japanese housing by area wise may be small, but they have more technically advanced, facilities and everything's within that small component. Whereas in Australia, we have very big houses and all those things, but then, they're not that much of facilities. In order to heat the house, we have to spend a lot of things, but there it's a kind of a different techniques and methodology. But I think it is coming. I mean, I was just going through newspapers yesterday or day before yesterday. I think it is in Karnataka or in Andhra Pradesh, or maybe in Andhra Pradesh. One lady has found a house with just the water pipes of two big things, and then she's making energy efficient kind of things. It's a kind of innovation. So I think urbanization, smart cities is a solution for that.
Thank you very much. We have one question in the chat box, and then I will read it out, or you can also read it out, Professor Kalirajan, while others are getting ready with their questions. Shall I read it out, or you can read?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, I will read it out. Dear all, I would like to appreciate the Institute for this initiative of Golden Jubilee Lecture Series. My sincere thanks to Professor Kaliappa Kalirajan sir for the thought-provoking lecture. My questions are, to what extent the EU nations, USA and China are transforming their economic policies from linear to circular so as to achieve the low carbon energy systems? What are the opportunities for India in this regard? There are two questions.
Yeah. Okay. Because I don't see the name of the person. The name of the person is welcome. Or?
That's also we also trying to. Can you just can the author of this question identify herself or himself? So that
could be one of your staff. Or,
anyway. Somebody called welcome. Actually, I don't know.
That's what I thought. That I read it, but I didn't go through the last section. Welcome,
sir. This is Videsha, sir.
Videsha. Okay. This is one of our students. His name is Videsh. Yeah.
Okay. Videsh, welcome with your thank you and the questions. Yeah, I think. Say EU is one of the leading regions that is promoting the low carbon energy system for a very long time, and they have a European Green Fund. So that European Green Fund is being used for many in many areas to promote this kind of a low carbon, and from there the circular economic system is one of their components in the EU. But United States, that in say there only with the the Biden, it has come as a kind of a forefront. But before then, when Trump was there, he withdrew from that 2015 things. That in 2017, and also in 2017 he came out from the TPP with this intention that he didn't believe that climate change or anything else is very important for the economy. But now with the Biden, it is coming up slowly, and then they are trying to go for contributing more towards low carbon energy systems. So whatever the US spends and taking the technological things, it will be only second to EU, because EU is the leading one. With respect to China, I think that they are also working on this circular economy concept, because smart cities, they are also developing. And for your information, they are the leaders in the battery electric car innovations. And they are the #1 producers, #1 consumers. And the government has given a lot of incentives for using the electric cars. But I think when you come to China, I don't say that it is a great thing, because they are the #1 polluters. So they have to do all these things in order to show that they are really very conscious about the emissions reduction process, and then they are contributing towards. But you have to remember always that that's what I showed you in that one, their export is always carbon intensive. But then you may ask another question. It is not entirely from China. It is because the supply chains and various multinational corporations are producing these things within China, and that is why it is coming up. But these questions, even though they produce, but China has the capacity to control it because it is happening within their country. So they can put a lot of restrictions on the production techniques and other things, which they are now trying to do it in the Beijing region. So in the Beijing region, is it very clear and not much emissions, emission reduction is much faster, but in Shanghai and Beijing. But in the rest of the Asia, Guangdong and these kind of areas, it is flourishing. And also inside, internal. Now, internal areas also, there are a lot of, each province has been inviting investment from this Guangdong and then in the coastal regions to come inside. But that has led to the flooding of investment, but without properly following the regulations for carbon emissions. So Chinese case is very bit complicated because each region has a different regulations, and in order to promote, attract for foreign, not only foreign, but domestic investment from the, the kind of east coastal area to inside, they do a lot of juggling with their policies. So that is the thing. But what are the opportunities for India in regards? Say, Indians' opportunities comes from the services sector more than in the commodity sectors. Because, for example, waste management. So India is one of the leading countries in terms of waste management, and even Thailand and Malaysia, Indonesia, they have been getting more benefit out of this thing. So in my view, the services sector in terms of low carbon energy systems is also important. And India has an added advantage over other countries. In terms of producing the low carbon energy systems, I think that still China has the edge and we have to just learn it. But in this case, it is we can invite the Chinese companies to come in, just like the solar panels of a Chinese company. I think it is the Sun Corporation, Sun something, and they are producing in Mumbai and the nearby areas and to export from India. So like that, we can invite those people to come in, but we have to be little bit choosy in those kind of investment because it should not affect our domestic entrepreneurship, because make in India should not be damaged because of these kind of investments. I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, Professor Madheshwaran is in go ahead, Professor Madheshwaran. Over to you.
I have thank you very much. And of course, as usual, I've been hearing your lecture right from my PhD days onwards, which you have motivated me to work on stochastic front-end production function way back in 1990. See, I have a clarificatory question when you're talking about China. See, in China, the climate change, the climate policy has been strengthened by the mandated carbon intensity reduction target, which all you know, which because you have worked a lot on China, which is a simple measurement of carbon efficiency under the single factor framework. And if this is so, is this carbon regulation actually effective for total factor carbon efficiency in China? That's my clarificatory question.
No.
They are heading towards the 14th five-year plan or something else, yeah.
Yes. Because you see, that total factor productivities is a combination of not only different inputs, but also how these inputs are combined. So that is why we say that when we call total factor productivity, we divide into two combination factors that decide the total factor productivity. One is technological progress, and another is the technical efficiency concept. That is, simply technology is not given to you, you are not going to get it. So the application of the technology by using the best practice techniques. So unless that is there, it is not going to help. Simply, I mean, that's what I said. So China is the #1 polluter in the world, and their exports are also carbon intensive. It is, but so they are having the extensive carbon intensive exports. So how to compensate? So every country is trying to complain about China's thing. So they are, in order to compensate, they are spending a lot of money on wind power, and then the solar panel. That they have surpassed Germany in the production of solar panels in 2010. So from 2010 on, they are on the leading #1 producers and distributors of the solar panel, and they are working on that. So in that kind of things, it is possible for them to get an edge to show to the world they are working towards these things. But they know that if they put a lot of, that why are they these carbon intensive, they can put the blame on the multinationals and other things, but still, as you rightly said, they have the capacity to control them. But if they start to control, then all these multinational companies may try to go for other havens. So they are in a different kind of fixing. So it is not possible. I mean, it is there. Okay, these policies, just like the carbon pricing is there, but most of the countries are using only $2 or $3. So it is nothing to the entrepreneur. So he can just go on to this unless the carbon pricing is lifted. According to IMF and the World Bank study published in 2018, they recommend $75 per ton. Okay, so unless we reach there, the carbon pricing is also not going to help. And the ETS system, we all study in economics theoretically. The ETS system is also not just like Dobbin's, the tax sharing system is not going to help. So it is just, as you said, in the old wine, put it in new bottle.
Okay.
So that is the thing.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Thank you very much. And then, are there anyone else is in the queue to ask any question or comment? So I don't see anything. And then Professor Kalirajan, this must be close to 10 o'clock in the night. So must be time for you to go to bed.
No, still 4 minutes are there.
Yeah, that 4 minutes we will have for a vote of thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this very thought-provoking lecture. And then, so we have a formal vote of thanks by Professor Shyamala, one of my colleagues. She is head of Population Research Center. She will be proposing for vote of thanks. But on behalf of Chairman and then myself, we thank you very much for taking your time, and especially foregoing your evening time, especially that you have spent your time with us, and then we are very thankful to you, sir. Over to Professor Shyamala.
Good afternoon, everyone, and maybe good evening to Professor Kalirajan. It's my pleasant duty to propose vote of thanks on the occasion of this ISEC Golden Jubilee Lecture Series. First of all, I thank Professor Kaliappa Kalirajan, Professor Prof of School of Public Policy, the Australian National University, Canberra, for delivering such a thought-provoking lecture on low carbon energy systems. I think I understand that despite his busy schedule, he has been kind enough to deliver this lecture, and we are highly obliged. And I understand it is night time and he had finished his dinner and sitting for this lecture. Thank you so much for sparing your time and enlightening us. And as always, you have been very supportive to ISEC. And thank you, Professor Kalirajan, for this wonderful talk. Next, I thank Professor Thorat, the Chairperson Board of Governors, ISEC, for chairing this session. Professor Thorat, an individual with a vision, has always been a guiding force to ISEC members. And thank you so much for taking a keen interest in ISEC activities, Professor Thorat. We much appreciate your interest and initiative. My thanks are also due to Director Professor Rajshekhar for his welcome address. The idea of this Golden Jubilee lecture has been conceived by him, and we, the faculty members, are very much appreciative of his new initiatives and enthusiasm, and I'm sure ISEC will reach new heights with his leadership. Thank you, Professor Rajshekhar, for organizing this. I also thank Professor Kala Sridhar, Professor Center for Research in Urban Affairs, for introducing Professor Kalirajan. And Professor Kala is an expert in urban affairs, land use regulations, and urban poverty, and the right person to introduce the speaker. Thank you, Professor Kala, for your interest in this. And finally, I thank all the invitees for their keen participation. Over to Professor Rajshekhar.
Yeah, just as she was thanking everyone, the power went off. So this is kind of
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And then good evening, good night to you, Professor Kalirajan. Thank you very much, sir, Professor Thorat, sir. So thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kalirajan.
Thank you very much for nice. We'll see you later.
Pleasure for being there. Look forward to your visit to ISEC sometime.
Yes, sure. When it comes, and Professor Shyamla, thank you very much. Sorry that in the beginning when I was saying hello to everyone, I couldn't see your name on the gallery. So that is why I missed you. Otherwise, I had communicated with you earlier. So thank you.
I am sitting in the ISEC seminar hall, therefore you may not see my name.
That's why I couldn't see your name. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Wendy, good night.
Okay, Rajshekhar.
Sir, I'm here, sir, still.
Yeah. You want to have some discussion?
Yeah, I think I'll call you, sir. I'll call you from my room. Yeah, would that be fine, sir?
Oh, from here also, or you can call from room?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. I will call you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I close now?
Yeah. Please close, sir. Good.